So, good evening. Welcome to the September 14th Town Center and Library Committee meeting. Thank you all for coming. Our first agenda item is public comment. Did you want to say anything, Mary?
Yeah.
Suzanne, do you know? Nope. Okay.
Okay.
And that's our public for tonight. Additions or deletions to the agenda? Did you have
Yeah.
something?
So I would like to table the update on the remaining library building work until after tomorrow's walkthrough with Jay and Alex, the contractor. They're doing a final walkthrough on what was done this summer.
Okay.
And he's going to get an update on the windows, which have been approved and paid.
Yep.
And then we need to figure out what's left to do.
Okay. And you'd probably figure out how that impacts the request for the ARPA money.
I will, but yeah,
We
I
don't,
want to know what Alex says is still. I can ask him if his bid is still good from a year and a half ago.
no harm
But
in
my anticipation is he's going to say no. He's
Can I
going to
ask
want
you a
to
question about
rebuild
the windows? Are they taking the windows out or are they just?
the 5 historic windows, which are the 5 that are the only 5 that are still historic.
Uh-huh.
They're going to take the windows out, put plywood in, take them to a shop and restore them
Okay.
that way.
Good.
The way most historic windows are restored. Yeah.
Okay.
So,
Thank you.
Okay.
and then I have an addition
Okay.
from a conversation I had with Martha Nye about private fundraising
Great.
for the project.
Okay. Let's put that at the end here.
Okay.
Under
It was
other.
a very interesting conversation and not one I had really thought about.
I had a similar conversation with Lisa Miller.
Oh, and Martha talked to Lisa about this, so that's probably how it circled around.
Great.
Yeah.
The only thing I would recommend is make a judgment on. So just to be clear, the library trustees have requested $150,000 for completing
Martha,
of ARPA money for completing the exterior work on the
it
library.
won't complete it, but
Well, I mean,
it'll get closer to completing it.
you know,
At least
painting
we'll get
it and
the
doing.
woodwork
a lot more.
repaired and the paint,
Well,
fixed.
So, and so that's,
But it's separate from the town center.
it's
committee.
separate from the
The
town center.
trust- This is the trustees.
So we don't need to deal with it.
No.
So Andrew's in the hot seat tonight. So, what was it? 3 weeks ago now? I
Yeah,
think 3 weeks ago, we got, the preliminary numbers on, the conceptual design, and all of that's conceptual and
Yeah.
preliminary. We've had a little time to digest it. There were a lot of numbers.
yeah,
I think somewhere in the order of 200 or 300 different numbers,
Yes.
to come up with a construction estimate. Did you want to present anything, or did you want to just receive questions?
I want to listen to what you guys have to say and
So I would.
my best
open
to
it up-
answer questions or come up with strategies for next steps for you, but
Okay, so I would open up to the committee, what,
Okay.
what do you all think? I think I think it's fair to say that.
We were
I think that the number was what, 10.2, almost 10.3,
10.2-ish, yeah,
almost $10.3 million. I think it was,
10.183.9.
10.2. Thank you,
I think
Mark.
it's 10.29.
Okay.
What I got.
Yeah, so 10 point, yeah,
But it's over $10 million, and I think it's fair to say that it took our breath away. But we've had some time to think about it. I've actually talked to several people who said they weren't surprised
Yeah.
that in this day and age that a building this old and likely this needy could cost that much. But I think it took all of us.
Yeah.
Gave us a bit of a start. So
it's probably important to note that all those items that are highlighted currently
Mhm.
on that draft budget worksheet are items that need to be verified by you guys.
right,
Those are soft costs that
right,
you guys kind of need to strategize and
Right.
decide how the town is going to address certain moving expenditures or relocation costs.
and they are all
There are
included
certainly
in the
things in there
software.
that
they are included in the 10.2 though, but,
Yeah,
Right,
so
they are-
we
they
threw in some generic placeholders of things
yeah,
that we have seen as reasonable numbers, but
right,
it all depends on
Yeah.
what you think is necessary or whether or not that needs to be part of the bond, maybe there are some items that you're confident that could be removed from the bond and done through a separate budget or just through general community.
So
Mhm.
I would suggest that, let's start with our own questions first, and then we'll work through, they're the ones that are highlighted in yellow, right? Those are the ones,
The ones that you guys.
Yeah.
and then we can go through those.
Mhm.
So any thoughts?
Yeah, I was thinking about dividing, looking at the costs and thinking about the must haves.
Mhm.
That, gosh, it would be really nice to do this. And does this need to be in the budget, in the project?
I would put
Um,
this under must do, should do, and could do.
Right,
Mhm.
there you go. Well, and there's a certain little bucket that we've talked about. It would be prudent to do it now, like some
We
of the
should.
post office. Like, in the best of all possible worlds, if we could pay for it, it would be the best use of time, at least. I don't know. Anyway, I'll go on. So, but the must do for me is the building, the HVAC, the plumbing, the heating, just insulation, making this building safe and healthy for the people who work here and the townspeople who come in here, and doing whatever parts of the post office and the site plan that are required by the floodplain. And there's portions of both of those projects.
Yep.
Right? There's some costs associated with the floodplain issues in the site work and the post office.
So that goes for the building, that goes back to the original requirement. Because we are spending a large portion of work beyond 50% of the value of the building, there are a couple different metrics you could use, I think. But it's triggering doing
The
some
floodplain stuff.
floodplain.
The flood
And so
stuff,
you
yeah.
guys opted to do wet floodproofing.
Right,
Dry floodproofing is not practical for this building.
Mhm.
It's extremely expensive. And so some of the things that we are doing are in response to that. The
Mhm.
post office is one of the areas that you have to address.
Yep.
The
So
pipe
is
trench,
the pipe trench is part of
the
the
pipe,
flood.
yes, the
proofing.
pipe
Okay.
trench is part of
I
that.
wasn't clear.
Abandoning all that equipment that's in that pipe trench and getting up above.
Yep.
And what we know from the post office specifically is that once you do that, it creates a ripple effect of
Yeah,
how do you do it in a cost-effective way?
because of the way it was built,
Without-
you have to take those
Yep.
metal plates off.
Yeah,
and-
it's right now there's
and you're in the
there's a metal
little
deck
area.
that's
So
spanning.
could we delve into that a little bit further? For this building, we talked about wet proofing this building.
Yeah.
And the way to deal with that is with the windows or vents of some sort to let the
Yeah, the
floodwaters
pressure
come in.
vent thing.
So because this building is historic, we're relying on the exemption to not actually putting the floodgates in. So, but we are recommending doing the slab pressure release valves to help protect the foundation.
Okay, and that's
Really
what's
reduce
what's included in here, right?
That's included. in
And
here.
so, and windows for the basement then.
So generically, there was a meeting where we presented kind of three conceptual options. You could do the floodgates, you could do windows, or you could do like an opaque infill panel that's insulated, and maybe is made to look like the old, like a patterning of the old double houses.
Talked about, yeah.
Yeah.
we talked
And-
about brick and having it inside.
Yeah,
or
so brick would
something.
be more expensive.
Yeah.
We
okay.
were assuming something that's rot resistant, but not brick. That compared to the cost of a window is fairly comparable. And I don't think I was at the actual meeting where you were given those two options, and you guys said, for now, let's assume windows just for
Mhm.
aesthetics, and then, but the cost is fairly negligible
Right.
between the two.
Mhm, okay.
Okay, so and then flood proofing, so this is something that I have been curious about. I mean, a big portion of the post office expense, post office is a big line item. It's $1.2
Yeah.
million. Part of that is rafters and and dealing with the roof for solar, and the other part of it is the floodproofing.
And I think I broke that out. I have to
Mhm.
find,
Yeah, because the post office was 1.2, but it sounds like a lot of that, what we
It's-
have to do for the flood.
so the post office roof specifically is being triggered by the desire to do solar
Mhm.
on it. And I broke those two line items out so that you could see it. And back up to one of the first drafts of the budget worksheet. And I think that line item is actually not that expensive. It's a little bit lower
60 or
than
70 south.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you had
But-
To
that on
reinforce
there.
the roof is
Yeah.
the 60 or 70. So my
Yeah, you had
question is, what happens if we don't put solar panels on the post office roof?
I would have to look back, but the assumption is that you would not have to reinforce the roof.
Yeah, on your little.
There are some areas where we would have to address some drift load because of the stairwell.
Right.
But
Yeah, you had 67,200 for just the post office roof reinforcement as something we could take out.
That
on
include the
list.
demolition on the ceiling?
so we're replacing all the electrical. So the ceiling is going to be hard pressed to stay as it is, and running new ductwork, we're assuming new ceiling.
And we don't
most of
have,
the
and
post
there's
office,
hardly
or
any,
could be left exposed too.
but you're gonna also insulate that more than.
The
it is
ductwork won't be in the ceiling.
We're insulating above the roof.
above.
The roof needs to be replaced, and so it's going to get
Okay.
torn off from above. And then the insulation level is going to be brought up to current code requirements.
Okay.
Above, and then a new roof is put on.
But the ductwork doesn't need to be above the ceiling. In fact, it'd be. difficult
No,
not
but
to-
you're going to be hard pressed to, this is one of those things where you can talk in circles and say, we're going to try to salvage this and that. When you get into construction, you're going to start cutting holes and you're going to end up with Swiss cheese. And you're going to end up spending the money in a change order because half of what is there is gutted anyways during the redo of electrical and mechanical.
Well, one thing that's very clear after this past July is that the post office is vulnerable to flooding.
Yes.
Yeah.
We're only a month away from when it
The
did.
historic building though fared pretty well.
It did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and it shows why you don't need floodgates necessarily in the windows. The windows are above the floodplain, so it'd have to flood the entire basement well above floodplain to
Yeah.
even get close to the windows. So
And even if that happened, the pressure things would protect the foundation.
the pressure valves,
It
it's
wouldn't-
a
we
good,
didn't Have in the 27 flood, one corner of the building collapsed, the
yes,
foundation
yeah,
came
the
in.
southeast.
Yeah.
There was a fair amount
Right,
of
in the corner.
river wash. It was really floodway. The building was in the floodway during the 27 flood.
Yeah, the
And it
picture-
wasn't in.
There's a
the staff.
picture in Harriet's book.
It's pretty scary.
But yeah, when it comes to
Right.
flood response, the post office is the significant of the two in terms of cost.
Okay, and that pipe trench, so if the building is above the windows are above the floodplain.
The pipe trench is considerably lower than your windowsill for the
It
basement.
is, but the floor is above the floodplain. And if the foundation below the windows on the post office were they're compromised now. There's holes in them, so it's understandable why water did get into those pipe trenches, and I saw it.
Yeah, 'cause there's holes in the cement block there.
Yeah.
There's standing water in there every time I go in there. So
Yeah.
regardless of flood or not, there's standing
it's
water. And
Definitely not. I mean, standing water in a building is
It's not a
never a
good
good thing. It's never a good thing.
Huh?
Unless it's a swimming pool.
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
Turn the post office into the
We
swimming.
can try
pool.
that. I mean, there's a big desire for a swimming. pool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Why don't we put it in the basement?
That's a really narrow lane though down there. It's what, 2 feet?
But just relax.
Yeah,
And my recollection is one of the challenges with that pipe trench is that when they built the cap on the pipe trench underneath the exterior skin of the wall, right?
So it's each wall of the pipe trench is made up of a CMU wall. The outside, the exterior of the two is used as your brick veneer sill. So the brick veneer is sitting on that CMU.
And there are piers for the roof? Is that how that
There
works?
are columns, there are locations where there are footings and.
But that's what's holding up the roof. It's not the walls that are holding up the roof.
No, the wall itself is not a bearing wall.
But in order to address that, what we talked about was filling it, and the least expensive way to fill it was to essentially gut it from either the inside or the outside, or.
Yeah, there were three options that we talked about with the structural engineer.
Mhm.
And the least expensive is to cut out the metal deck and slab that span that trench and then fill it from above. And then you have it to be able to compact it and get to the compaction levels that's required.
Fill it from the inside.
David has a hand up.
David,
Thank you. I wanted to just take a half step back, if I may, and share my kind of overall feelings about it, and ask Andrew a question at the same time. So I've been through a couple of larger projects and gone through value engineering processes like we are beginning to embark on, and that conversation and understanding everything that's in this project is important and a worthwhile exercise. My feeling is, at the end of the day, this project, while expensive, is not extravagant. I think that, as we've gone over before, that when you go in there and you, like Andrew said, you know, do you not do something while you're doing X? You know, do you not do Y while you're doing X? And the two extravagances, if you will, and with finger quotes around it, might be the solar and the site work. And to be honest with you, those are the two things that I'm most excited about, because I think that it's the way we need. It's just where my values are. Let's put it that way. And I think that both of those strands of this project are things that we can raise money for. And I feel like we have a need in the town to provide town offices for our critical functions and staff. I think this is the best location. I think it'd be more expensive elsewhere. And I think it's a building worth salvaging. That said, I think that Richmond, that we have a problem on a little less on what we want to do and a little bit more on how to pay for it. And I think that problem is part of a larger context and story in our town. And I don't pretend to have an answer to it, but those are my feelings. And the last thing, which kind of is my lead into Andrew's question, my question for Andrew is, in my limited experience in this, we might do well to kind of 10 to 20%, probably more like the 10 to 15% in a value engineering exercise would be a job well done. And I'm wondering what Andrew's experience on that is. And you're really talking about 10, 15% off of construction costs, because the soft costs don't reduce proportionately. You know, we're going to need owner's rep / clerk of the works, and $60,000 for that position over a 9 to 12 month project is not, that's not a big allocation. The architectural engineering, the design fees, those were not out of line with what I've seen. Buying some furnishings and equipment for a new building and giving us a completely fresh start, those aren't out of line with what I've seen. So again, those are my feelings, and I don't want to cut short the conversation that we're having tonight because it's an important one. But I'm a big picture guy, and that's where I operate best. And Andrew, if you wanted to, you might have more experience with the quote unquote VE process. And if you do, feel free to add or to clarify my assessment of that. But
Yeah, that value engineering is always a challenging process. We do it regularly, especially lately with prices being the way that they are. We essentially go into pretty much every project assuming it's going to be over budget. And I think, going back to one of the things you started with, I would 100% agree that not a lot of what we are proposing is superfluous and extravagant, I think was the word that you used, Dave. I think there was a specific discussion, one meme where we started recognizing that the post office scope was pushing us more and more, and just how complicated it was. And it was very difficult not to address certain deficiencies while we were doing other work that we had to do. And I think one of the questions was, is there an interest in gussying up exterior for the sake of aesthetics? And the answer was clear. It was no. So we haven't really made any decisions based off of aesthetic inclinations at all. This is really just kind of bare bones as far as the building goes. Doesn't mean that you're going to be left with a building that's not pretty. It just means that we're not looking at doing things that are over the top by any means. I would agree that. So as far as the specific list, for VE, we can maybe get to that, but 10% is, I think, a better number to use. That is usually what our target is as a starting point before you really start cutting out things that are critical or like significant cuts. And given the scale and scope of this work and what's included in it, 10% is going to be pushing it. In that initial budget sheet that I gave you, there was a second page. And it had, and I just immediately threw out just some really low hanging fruit that.
This one
So
here.
the site work
Yeah.
talked about is a $1 million line item.
Yep.
I will emphasize that one of the first clear things that we heard coming into this from you was that the site needs to be redone. It is not conducive to kids moving back and forth between this building and the church. It's not safe. It is we identified that the parking is inefficient. We can do the same number of parking spots with less impervious paved area on the site.
Yeah.
And as
Yeah.
soon as our landscape architect showed you the options with the same number of parking and green space that addresses your main street,
Plus, it
that was
improves
received
the-
pretty well. So I would agree that with Dave, it is one of the more exciting parts that I think you guys have used
Yeah.
to market it. So
Yeah.
keeping that in mind, there were some line items included in site that were low hanging fruit. There was an allowance for a story pavilion that could be done in future easily.
That could be a fun,
Privately
that's a
funded.
private fundraising opportunity, I think.
We had an allowance for some exterior signage. That could be something that is removed. We did have granite for curbs in there. It's a longer term, better quality product that's, going to last, but you could save 50,000 by going to concrete. Most of that is in labor though. It's not actually the material. It's,
Right.
and then
Your solar.
there was an adult that we had weighed for you guys going to triple pane, which is 150,000. Obviously, we're not going to be adding costs to this project, so that's not an option.
And you said the energy gain there was not
Minimal.
It's considering what we're doing with the walls,
Yeah.
it doesn't make sense to go to triple pane, I would say.
Yeah.
Your biggest impact is going to be on air sealing and infiltration, not convection. So,
Yep.
and then We've already minimized the amount of work for the elevator. We're not proposing replacing the elevator now. It's just relocating the elevator machine room, so there isn't anything there. And then the post office roof, which we talked about, you could save some money by not having to reinforce it. And then the ripple effect from that is removing the solar scope on there.
But if we don't reinforce it, if we ever wanted to put solar on there, we're gonna have to be coming back
Correct.
to
Unless,
reinforce it.
unless solar technology changes in the
that's true.
next 10 to 15 years and becomes much lighter and smaller and which,
It's unlikely. So, you know, how solar technology is changing is it's getting more energy dense. So that there are more watts per panel. But the reason why the roof needs to be reinforced is you have to hold them onto the roof.
Right.
So they
Right.
don't fall
Yeah.
away.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's the balance that are
Yeah.
the problem, and I don't see a good technology anywhere near feasible at this time. That would change that.
Yeah.
So I think where I was going is, you know, this list removes,
Not that much,
Not much, about
100,
200,000.
200,000.
yeah.
200,000.
So it can get you, I have to double check the numbers. This doesn't actually.
220,000 is what is on that page.
So that those are kind of the initial kind of low hanging
Mhm.
items. I would say on the 10%, that's certainly pushing it without having to get into the game of deciding what do we not touch at all. And
Yeah,
So the question in my mind is, it's similar to Dave's, is, you know, how do we pay for it? And, you know, there might be more than one pot to pay for it. One pot that, you know, that we're responsible for really is coming up with a number for a bond.
right.
And there may be other aspects of this that could be paid in different ways, like the site work and like the solar. You know, the site work is, you know, is a really attractive part of the project. It might be
Mhm.
the biggest benefit for the site work, or the attractive part of the site work is really for the library, you know,
And-
in many ways.
And that, my question was, so part of the site work is moving the handicapped access
Mhm.
for the library into that, I don't know what you call it, the back and forth.
The green space, maybe.
No, I was thinking, no, it moves the handicapped,
So
it
the
puts
back,
the handicapped
back parking lot.
access off of the parking lot rather than
Off the street.
off of Bridge Street.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it means people aren't backing into Bridge Street from those handicap spots, which is great.
And it also improves the ramp
And it
access to the
improves
library.
Ramp access. But that, you know, I don't know what the cost of that part of it is. There are two big library grants coming up that may be able to pay for that part because ADA
It may be,
part
yeah,
of
yeah,
that.
yeah.
Yeah. So there might be some parts of the site work.
so, yeah, I mean, I would say this is up to you guys to
Yeah.
figure out how you
Yeah.
want to strategize and.
Yeah.
You know,
Well,
there was a point where you said I don't know if it was you or Josh, but I thought someone had said you're legally required to bond. If it's gonna be under this contract, you're legally required to bond for
So
what
would
you
that
anticipate
be-
being the,
Separate contract then to do the other work? Is that what that?
or you have the money reserved and then you
In
immediately pay off I'm not sure how that's a
It's
question
a Josh
for
question.
Josh
Yeah.
and Connie and,
So if we,
but-
I mean, one of the grants is coming up, they're supposed to be issuing the applications any day now. Well, that was the last we heard,
I
but
talked to the VLCT today about there's that municipal energy resilience program.
yeah,
And that the implementation grants on that are up to 500,000, which, you know, I think there's reasonable opportunity for us in that, you know, for
yeah.
the solar and the energy components.
So we.
However, it's being administered through the Buildings and General Services,
Oh.
which is an agency that's never done a grant program before. And they have what, maybe $100 million worth of damage to state office buildings right now. And this might not be their highest priority,
Yeah,
considering their offices got flooded
Yeah.
too. So,
but So
I-
the
I agree with
advantage
Gus.
to not having to do a bond and say minus any grants we receive, the more we can have the grants in hand before the bond, the better.
It's hard to apply for
Or
a grant
taking
without-
out parts of the project that we think we can either grant or privately fundraise.
So my question would be, so
Yeah.
I get it with the post office. I mean, if you're. I don't see how we avoid dealing with the post office. Seeing as we're doing such a major renovation of the building and it's
Well,
gonna be required by.
We are going to
The
con-
pipe trench, then you're kind of, then the
Once
dominoes
you do the
fall,
pipe,
right?
once you do the pipe trench, which appears to be a must do.
Well, the
The rest of it
floodplain.
is, you really should do it. While you're doing it, because you're gonna just make a big mess out of the whole space anyways, and it's.
And
It's
the-
not like you're gonna do it at some other time. However, on the site work. There's some site work that's stormwater related.
It'd be good to know how much is storm out of that site number, how much is storm. I know we have to do the back corner thing.
Uh,
That's 1.2 million or something, around 1.2 for the site work.
I mean, we didn't.
It's
Yeah,
Not really.
I don't know
broken.
if you
necessarily
can break
look
it out
at,
like
we
that,
didn't
can
look
you?
at a non-site.
Yeah, I mean,
Try to-
like Dave, the site thing was the most exciting thing for me. So, and making it more welcoming and safe, and safety is a big issue for me, and just knowing how hard it is for someone, even with a walker or a mother with
Happened to
a,
our screen.
baby carriage to get into the library. Suzanne's nodding her head's good.
I mean,
No.
there would be site work that's necessary to be done for sure, but you absolutely could defer the site project as for a separate item if you think you can get a hold of that money.
So
Elsewhere.
how that might be advantageous is we might
Miss our
fundraise.
screen.
Yeah, did your
Yeah.
computer go off?
We lost the
screen.
screen.
I don't know if we lost the people or
We
just the
didn't
screen.
lose the people. we just
Okay.
lost the screen.
Oh,
I can still see you and
Okay.
hear you.
For some reason, our
it's over here.
projector.
Yeah.
kept-
But my husband's comment was, oh, the site work is gonna be the visible part of this project to the town.
Yeah,
They're gonna think they got something for the money because they're gonna see a different look to the approach and yeah.
I think it might be worth going through the exercise though, of trying to understand. If you were to look for 10% out of this budget. You gotta look where the money is, and the site work is a big piece of the money. It's a fairly significant.
I'd be willing to come do plantings and
Well, I mean,
take down that hedge and put a nice fence with some rosa roses in front of it.
I don't know
better
if we
than
need to
what's
really, I'm not sure we need to figure it out.
No.
What we do need to
Yeah.
figure out is, what would be necessary.
Yeah.
So that there's gonna be stuff that for permitting that we're gonna have to have. We have to do stormwater management. And we have to do
Right.
floodplain mitigation.
that-
Those two
whatever.
things
Yeah,
are must do's if no matter how we touch the site. And I don't know what the rest of it is. Now, it could
Right.
be compelling.
And my
For
question-
fundraising,
yeah. And my question, of course, is it another domino thing where we have to do so much of the site work is required by the floodplain that it doesn't make sense not to do the rest?
So we're not actually, with the amount of work we're doing, we're not building a whole lot. And
No.
so we don't need to do compensatory storage.
Oh, really? Okay.
There was a little bit of lowering, but Kevin might be able to.
Site work.
My feeling is if we can get this down below 9 or 8.9 or 8, I don't know. I'm trying to think about a number
10%.
that people would feel below 10 would be really good Cause 10 sounds like a really lot. 10 million? I don't know. But I don't want to just set a target number and go for it either.
You know, I mean,
Does the town want to continue to have a post office in that spot?
I think
Oh,
absolutely.
man.
So I mean, that's the alternative to tell, like, that was something that was
We did.
very
talk about
high
it.
on all of the surveys, was we like having the post office there. To continue to have a post office in that spot requires close to $1 million of renovation to make that spot. So
Yeah.
I think it's useful to perhaps share that with people, that this was
Yeah.
a community value. To keep that community value, we
Right.
are going to have to invest some money in it.
So, and that's one aspect that actually pays itself back. You know,
Yep.
so, you know,
Mhm.
it's almost $100,000 a year in rent.
Mhm.
So, you know,
Mhm.
it's a 30-year bond, that's $3 million for $1 million investment.
Yep.
It's a pretty good return on investment.
Right,
And
because as with
and
this
there's so
building, we
many,
don't have to be doing any more work on it if it's fixed
yes,
correctly.
And maintain.
well,
And
you know,
maintain.
there's still gonna be maintenance, you know, and
Well,
then,
and maintained, we added and maintained.
um. And I'm, the thing that I, you know, I mean, it looks to me, under the site work piece of this, a lot of this is dealing with the parking lot surface,
So what?
like the parking lot surface.
Okay,
It's new paving, it's demolition of what we got, grinding, you know. You know, so, you know, my question is whether we pay for that with a bond. If we just stick on with the site work for a minute, if we pay for that for a bond, or if we try to make that a separate fundraising project, maybe link it a little bit closer to the library,
Grants and
because
fundraising.
just
grants and
not
fundraising.
to slough it off on the library, but you know, that it is more closely linked to the library than it is the town center in some ways.
Yeah.
You know, program space.
On the town center lot, we do have to check with Josh about
Yeah,
how you separate, just making sure.
well, I think
Well,
that,
if not, we're not including any of it in the bond, then that's
right,
clean.
right.
If we're putting part of it in the bond, it might get messy.
So I think, you know, we can't, you know, I think what we need to do for Andrew is we need to come up with questions that we don't have the answer to. And right now,
We did some of them.
and so right now, you know, one question is what's the must do that we have to do for site work? You know, for permitting and floodplain mitigation. That would be one question. Relative to the cost that we have now. 48.
Yeah. And then the other site question would be
Come up,
if we didn't do the change in elevation at the library and the handicapped ramp
that's all.
part. That's a little chunk.
Okay, that's
That's
how it all
like
gets to
creating,
be.
is that in there? Creating the ramp, and there's some fill or something, because
So there, so
there was some more
out of
work.
the site work, that is all site work
Yeah.
costs. And there's quite a few of them, and you know, some of them are linked to the town office, post office, some of them are linked to the library, things like stairs and the ramp.
Mhm.
So, you know, I think we could look at that and try to figure out what the must do, should do things are.
So what I would suggest is if you guys want to come up with your list of wants versus not necessarily must do's, we can do the must and should,
Yeah,
but the things that you want to break out separately for the sake of
Okay.
trying to reach out to different sources of funding or
or grant.
phasing or
Phasing,
however you want to.
yep,
If you come up with that master list, we can try to
Yeah.
consolidate and break out some options.
Dave, do you have something you wanted to say?
Yeah, the magic word that just came up, which is phasing, which is the other way you attack these
Yep.
capital projects that you can't afford. How does that get treated by the town? For instance, if we were to do the site work, you know, either before or after the building renovation, How would we attack that? In other words, could we put together a package where that was paid through, a capital campaign or donations or grants plus a certain percentage of like a one-time hit to taxes?
You could do, you could do two bonds.
Oh, no.
It's been done, so the example I would give was when we built the middle school, the additions to the middle schools, the Camel Sump. At that time, there was a tenacious champion who wanted to put in a wood chip boiler in that.
Gee, who was that?
At the time, you were going to be messing up the entire building anyways. You were, since you were because they were removing electric heat. The buildings used to be heated with electricity.
Yeah.
So you're going to be touching every aspect of the building anyway. It's going to be a big mess. It was a big construction project. Why not build a boiler room that can accommodate a wood boiler and do the wood boiler at the same time, which would have at that time added like $500,000 to the project. The school board did not want to do that, and so they put the addition out to a bond vote, which passed by a narrow margin. And then the following year, they put out another bond just for the wood chip boiler, and that passed 2-1. So it is possible to do two different projects. It may be even possible to do that on, I haven't quite thought how you would do this. Do that on the same vote, have two different articles on the same vote, where you have building and site work.
And what is the goal of separating those?
Showing fiscal responsibility,
So people wanted to do the building, but not the site,
or vice versa.
or vice versa. That gets into the whole,
Well,
I don't know,
So I would say,
that's risky.
yeah. And do you do the site with the anticipation of doing the building, and you're actually responding to certain, because if you do the site and then you decide to do something with the building other than what you have currently planned, and those choices impact compensatory storage requirements on site, you're then going to have to either not do it or undo site work. So this is always
Yeah.
I'd hate to,
So I'm not saying I'm advocating for this.
No.
I'm just, I'm throwing out ideas to, and one of the things that I think that is another part of our responsibility is to explain this to
Oh, yeah.
the public and explain our thought process.
Yeah.
David, did you have another comment?
No, that was leftover hand up.
I would suggest that we make no firm decisions yet.
Oh, no,
no.
But Andrew, would it be a good thing for us to go through all those yellow things in the numbers, specific numbers?
you guys need to go through
Okay.
this.
Okay.
Yeah.
And cause
That's-
we don't know, I looked
For
at it.
example, prime example, and I mean, this is going to take some time, but the moving and storage expenses, that is a wild shot in the dark.
Yep.
Yeah.
From our standpoint, we don't know what you have planned in terms of where things, someone had floated renting a different space across the street. I don't even know if that's an option. So
probably different.
That's
if you
not-
say Everybody works
Yeah,
at home.
not our,
We talked about moving some functions,
but
yes.
you will have to, we talked about this in a lot of detail in terms of how difficult it's going to be to have people occupying the building.
And we
And
know that the post office, they talked to Aaron about having to not be in the post office space.
Yep.
For some amount
Yeah,
of time.
that's that, I think that'll be the most expensive thing, I mean,
Yeah.
whether. And we'll have to negotiate with them, whether we pay for that or whether the
Or they just
postal
don't
service.
pay rent for those months, but
that-
they're not
So that counts.
in there.
I don't think we would
That's-
pay for them and them not pay rent, so it's
No, I
one way or
think
the
it
other.
would, yeah.
Um,
What was Dave's comment? He just put up a comment. And then it went away.
It's in the chat.
Yeah, but I don't have it. I don't
got
have
it.
access to the chat. Can you just click on it so we can see it?
By the way, I'm sorry I couldn't be with you in person today. Big work day. So,
Oh, okay.
okay, no problem.
Okay. So
Uh,
we need to,
and guess coming, he's gonna have to leave at 8.
okay, but we need to do what Andrew is suggesting, which might end up telling us what questions we have.
Well, I can, so, this sheet isn't that difficult for me to
Right.
go through. The $60,000 for a clerk of the works, I agree with that.
No, but it's that whole 200 line items, all the yellow
Ye-
things in the 200 line item.
Yeah.
Oh,
but we-
no, I'm not saying,
no,
no, I'm just saying, yeah, only the budget worksheet. The
Yeah.
backup, you don't need to,
Yeah,
Okay,
this
okay,
one.
okay.
yeah,
okay.
no,
And-
sorry.
Yeah,
Yeah, and I don't think we're gonna do this to, like,
No,
be able
no,
to finish
no,
it
but
tonight, but
I
maybe
only
this is
meant
the
the soft-
agenda for
the
our
only
next
This
thing
one
meeting.
we can.
It's only the soft costs that you guys need to be
I think we
providing.
can do this, I think I agree with David that $60,000 for a clerk of the works is not unreasonable for this scale project.
just
Last
one,
What that is,
one
is,
document that he sent it the separate, and
That's
it's revision 3.
frankly, the HVAC, commissioning at 0, I
And
would
we've talked about doing
disagree,
that.
I would disagree with that.
But we're adding to that one. Yeah.
I don't know what it would cost to do commissioning, but I would love to have a number for it.
Let's assume it's 5,000 to 8,000. I don't think it'll
Okay.
be more than 10, but
For the HVAC, yes. Based on what happened at the library, we need somebody.
I absolutely, there are numerous occasions on buildings
Yeah.
where I've seen, not just cost savings, but having the equipment work.
And aggravation savings after the fact to have to
It's
tweak it
costly when that doesn't
over
work.
and over and over.
so I think, one of the reasons why we left this at 0 was conceptually without DDC controls. It's not that,
Yeah, I still have, I'm dealing with a building right now that is really messed up. And it's because, the engineers did it, designed one thing that contractors put in something else and nobody checked it.
And then the library.
well, so what you're describing though, just to me, because that's a system being designed and then installed differently than how it's designed is not going to happen on this project because we've been contracted to do construction administration, and how things are designed is how they are built.
Well, and and there's a bunch of things that you're not able to include in here, like incentives from Efficiency Vermont. And, Efficiency Vermont, should be able to help with the cost of building commissioning.
Yeah.
Jake would be able to tell us
Okay.
that. But I would be surprised if Jake didn't advocate for that, and I would certainly.
Hmm.
The moving expenses at $100,000, while that's just a number at a dartboard, I kind of hate to go much less than that, if the post office has to be out of here for 6 months. And
Well, that's not gonna show up in the bond. It's gonna be a decrease to the town center fund.
Yeah.
To the amount of money coming into the town center fund.
yeah,
So it doesn't cost us money, but it's less money for the maintenance things that have been coming
so
out.
I
of that.
think that's something that we can flesh out with the select board. Where do they want it on their, what side of their budget do they want it on? Do they want it on a bond?
But I agree with you. They're gonna have to move.
It's gonna cost something.
I mean, if the select board meeting room moves to the library, which they could, you've still got all the employees, and what are you gonna do? Are they
The,
all working?
the
They've
in-
gotta be able to meet with,
the interim financing, we can throw that at Connie. So, you have to have construction financing of some sort, so you gotta buy stuff before,
so there's gonna be some percent there of
Um,
the cost.
So, I would say that's a Connie and Josh question.
Mhm.
And they can find out from the bond bank.
Builder's risk, that's just what it
And I
costs.
don't, and maybe it's just you draw down on it as you do, I don't know whether you can do that with the bond money. The builder's risk insurance, I'm sure that,
So does the bond bank do interim financing?
I don't know. So I think we could find out about that. The solar, you could take solar out of this because that's something, that, either we get ARPA funds for. There is a way to do third-party financing of that. It doesn't need to be in this bond. It could be done by, a private party.
Yep.
Could put it on.
And worst case scenario, either way, it just gets phased for a later date and we stub up
Right.
and have it prepped
But we
and all the
leave-
electric is designed around the assumption
Then,
at some point
then we
you'll do
just
it. and-
decide whether we want to.
So, yeah, I would,
The
Yeah.
post office roof, leave that in and.
yeah, so I think
Okay.
the $300,000 is for the panels and the equipment, as I understood it.
Yeah.
And the structural, I think it would be foolish not to make the new structure.
If it's under
We're gonna remake
construction, we
the
should,
roof
yeah.
anyway, then we might as well do it. If we're rebuilding the roof,
The exterior signage and the furniture, whether that needs to be in the bond or in,
I
that
think
seems like a
that's-
budget.
Town
I think
budget, right?
that's a town budget item.
I think that's a town budget item
If
too.
the
I think you could,
department needs new desks for some reason, they just take it out of their
yeah,
budget.
and I think also probably for the phone system
We didn't put anything in.
and for the police department. So I'm just trying to answer all the questions that
Yeah.
Andrew had.
And that was one of the questions specifically about the police department we had a while back.
Yeah.
In terms
Right.
of if we are, if they're a tenant, is the tenant responsible for fit up?
Mhm.
So that includes
Yeah.
finishes to a certain extent.
So these.
It's not just special, we're not talking about
And sorry, yes. right.
lockers.
Yeah.
We're talking about doors, like if the tenant comes into a new space, sometimes a landlord requires that they pay for everything as far as modification to the space.
So that would be a conversation with the post office as well. And MMC TV, who said that they have some access to some monies for some fit out. And,
I think Karen said that the Historical Society had some, and we talked about the cultural, the grant from the Arts Council for display type things for the building, display cases and that.
which is not, it's not really in this budget. So
No.
I think we have answered your yellow
These
questions.
questions,
Um,
but we
Well,
added and
you-
took out.
You've acknowledged, like the moving storage expense, prime
We don't know.
clerk of the works, good to go.
I think that the moving and storage expense is a reasonable estimate well, again, I'm just shooting for a bond number. And the other things can come out of, the moving and storage expense, the 5,000 for builder risk should be in that. Interim finance might be a plus. We might add on that. The HVAC, I think, could be a plus, commissioning. The clerk of the works, yes, that should be in a bond. And the other.
Yeah.
The solar, no. The signage, furniture, phone system and equipment should be in our annual budget. And we
We're
can,
not gonna change the contingency or the inflation contingency.
well, that'll reduce it a little bit, right? But you just,
That's just good.
I would say no.
I think that
Inflation
needs to be in there for sure.
I think, 7.5%. Who knows? It's going up again now. Who knows?
So Andrew, what else? So
So would you be able to find out from the site engineers? Is there a way to phase that piece of the project? Yeah, and with some preliminary cost numbers. That would be a question.
So you're saying only do stormwater and any other
And flood
compensatory
mitigation.
storage requirements, otherwise
Yeah.
the site is left untouched.
well, I would like to know the number for that, just the library, the handicapped access part of the library project.
That's in
I
here.
think that's here.
That's
I
in
think
there?
I think it's about, where did I see it? I was looking at it. It's.
Because if there are grant opportunities and we have a number.
Yeah,
Then,
Bram, 325, should get 38,000.
I
Yeah,
mean,
so library,
Library, so side entrance ramp, concrete railings, 20,000, handicap ramp, concrete deck railings, 38,000, concrete sidewalks,
And the s-
26,700. So like, I think it's in this piece right
okay,
here.
I have that, I have that, so I can look it up.
okay.
Yep.
Okay,
46.
so why don't,
90,000.
well,
And then the 60,000 for the pavilion.
Right, that would be one for me, I would
Yeah.
think, let's. Not
so, I
put
mean,
that
that's
in the warrant.
160,000
So,
with the story pavilion included,
Yeah.
so.
no fence around pond. We wouldn't need a fence
What?
around the pond, right?
No, it was just, yeah, that was just a clarification from,
Oh, the fence around the pond? I thought your drawing had no
The
fence.
sewer line.
correct, yeah.
So, I can definitely commit to going through this in more detail myself, but
Yeah,
I would also, welcome suggestions,
Yes.
from,
yes.
it's kind of, again, it's must do, should do, could do. And for the site work, it would be, if we took out the should do and could do, what are the must do's? And do we,
Well,
do we
okay, so
gain
so
any-
with something like, this is broad brushstrokes, so as you dive in, if you're specifically targeting only the site,
Uh-huh.
there are a couple ways you could do it. There's certainly we can try to break out the library. We can do the all or nothing comparison pretty easily.
Mhm.
If you're going to start picking and choosing, that gets more complicated because picking and choosing certain things
Yeah, it's dependent on others.
are dependent on
Right.
others. So,
The dominoes.
So,
and we're not necessarily, and at that level of detail for this, we're more often than not, for feasibility estimates, a lot of iterations when you go through it, you can remove line items, and as you massage it, it still ultimately works out within the 10%
Mhm.
at most.
Right.
so that's what we're shooting for.
And
Mhm.
so no matter how you play, and we're trying to prep you with this short of removing the entire site from the scope of work, you're going to be hard pressed to get to a significant line item reduction
Right.
that you're going to feel like is a noticeable and difference to the scope of work.
Well, I would, yeah,
For feasibilities at this level, it doesn't, you're gonna, at 10 million, 9.5 million doesn't feel very different.
Mhm.
So you can spend a lot of time moving things around because there are contingencies built into this with this level of detail and unknowns where we have to make assumptions that are conservative. And so we're not necessarily, until you're prepared to remove something like the entire site,
Right.
I would encourage you not to get too fixated on, well, let's just remove this little
Right.
portion here, and then we're gonna move this, and then suddenly
Yeah.
we're gonna magically be $2 million less. That's not how this
I
exercise
know, we're
works.
not gonna get to too many.
so, I think that the site engineers are gonna be better at determining what is must do.
I think it's really, what do we have to do?
We can
Yeah.
give you the compensatory storage and the stormwater only.
Yeah.
But the assumption at that point is we are not touching the
Anything
parking.
else?
We're
Right.
not touching
Right.
the
I-
library. We're not touching any of the area out here.
Yep.
We're not addressing the handicap
Right.
stuff. That's all
Yeah.
a separate project.
We're not saying we want to necessarily remove it, but
Well,
it is one of, it's.
No,
what we do
this is
have-
a hard exercise, and I'm
Yeah.
just like,
Yeah, yeah.
you can spend a lot of time going through these iterations
Yeah,
to end up in the exact same place you're at right now. And you really have to kind of be
Right.
prepared to, like, if we were for a different project, I think that initial backup sheet that I gave in that first round,
yeah,
those were the low hanging fruit. That the reason why I attached this
yeah.
was the quick pass of these are the things you could cut out immediately to save some decent line items was mostly to show you the low hanging fruit doesn't get you more than $500,000
Right.
unless you're prepared to start cutting.
No, I just added it up without adding, we had two places we would add, but if we took out what we just said we would take out, it's only $345,000. Of course, it gets us below 10 million. It gets to 9.8,
So
but
part of the value of doing this exercise, and we could wind up in the same place. But if we have these questions, other people are gonna have these questions, and we have to
Yep.
be able to answer them.
Yeah, absolutely.
And this is why we decided to do you know,
Right,
to keep
right.
this in.
Yeah.
So, you know, I
Yeah.
think it is a worthwhile exercise. I would prefer to get the recommendation from the professionals first. And then add it back in.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
uh,
I mean, I just think site work, 1.2 million, somebody's gonna say.
Yeah.
Just like somebody's gonna say, 1.2 million for the post office,
Well, you
that's
know,
a little addition, you know?
well,
It's like, yeah, but it was built so badly in 1953.
but it's also, it is the obvious flood mitigation thing, you know,
Yeah.
and we have just gone through a
Right,
significant flood.
and that pipe trench flooded.
It's,
So,
you know,
yeah.
it would be silly to deal with this building and not deal with the
Right.
floodplain.
I agree.
And we've said that from the get-go, really.
Excuse me, Jeff, and all, the other question that I missed and that somebody will ask that I'm just channeling, I'm not
Yeah.
suggesting, is what if the money that we're spending on the police department's renovations,
Uh-huh.
if that were to be standard office space, what would the delta be? And again, I'm not proposing it, and I don't think it's really all that much.
It's
And
really the locker room, right? Other than that, it
You know,
is standard office space.
I mean, I think it's the responsible thing to do at this moment in time, personally. But that's a likely question, you know, why are we giving new offices and I haven't looked at it closely enough to know if there's some real money there or not.
Right.
We've got news for you, Andrew. We have an interim chief.
Hey,
Which actually it'd probably be worth talking to him. And he doesn't mind the space that's down there right now.
What do you hope to achieve from?
What's that?
So we have spent, I'm just gonna, I don't want to go down that road again. We spent about 5 months going in
Yeah.
circles about the police station
We
program.
Mhm.
So
let's not.
if you want to reopen that can of worms, I would suggest that you guys
We
think
open
about
the
that a
can.
little bit.
Well,
But we
will-
can't go through that iteration again of
No.
demonstrating
Right.
why the police station is undersized.
No, it's not
And-
undersized. So we've had experience with many different chiefs over the past 5 years. We've had 5. And 2 of them, one of them we have right now, thinks that the space that we have right now is not so bad.
Okay.
And so it's not about adding, it's about subtracting. You know, we have doubled the size of the space and brought it upstairs. It would be worth having the conversation with them and not going down the path of Sally Ports and all that stuff. This chief is actually the Heinsberg.
So at this stage, if that is all it is.
Yeah.
It's an insignificant line item then for the cost, because we're talking about walls and partitions.
Mhm.
If it's half of this space and this is a tenant
Mhm.
and they're only in half of that space, it's gonna be the same cost for renovation.
Right.
The mechanical system stays the same, the electrical stays the same, the cost per square, like
Moving the walls is not,
moving the
big
walls,
expense.
it maybe there's a couple doors count different, but
Well, that was my.
You know,
It's real. I guess that's, and I probably knew the answer to the question. It's really, we're talking locks and cameras and stuff like that.
security system, yeah.
Yeah.
Kind of like specialties, and
have
Yeah.
that in this.
if they need to, if they need to have bulletproof glazing, you know, that's.
Right. Real
Right,
money,
and-
yeah.
Town has to
That's
pay.
not in your bid though, security systems and stuff.
We
with
didn't
police.
include, no,
It's
Right,
not
because-
in this.
Correct. so we left that out,
Right.
but there are certain things.
The locker room and the armory,
Yeah, it's still not,
Yeah.
the armory is a
it's
closet.
a lock closet,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, it's not a big
So
deal.
it's
Same
a-
with the
it's a
evidence.
fairly small lot.
Locker room and the shower.
I think my question about the police station specifically was more similar to what you were saying, is does that come from a separate budget? Is there a budget set aside? Just like
I think,
asking the town to pay for furniture. Is there a police budget that can pay for?
Their desks
Yes.
they're gonna need.
yes,
there's
we have
okay.
a quite healthy police budget at the
Yeah,
moment.
yeah. So Dave, I think the answer is that it really already is being built as standard office space that
Yep.
could be purposed to a tenant should we end up with no police in this building. Because other than the locker room, there's nothing being added for them that's police specific.
Well,
The locker room, bathroom, it's,
Yeah.
the plumbing is probably the most costly and difficult thing to work around.
but we're
for
still not,
future
we're
changes.
talking, a
The-
few tens of thousands of dollars.
Otherwise, yeah, I would say it's,
Pretty much tenant, it could be tenant space if it wasn't gonna be police
Yeah.
space.
if they do end up having to do specialty items.
And one of the things.
Given that it's it's a public function, you're gonna be spending a little bit more money than your average office space as far as the wall that addresses the stairwell and
Yeah,
making
and
sure that it's a clear,
Oh, yeah,
bulletproof
they have
glass
the
and stuff like
bulletproof
that.
glass thing.
and also just something that
Bulletproof
has a strong visual
panel.
connection so that people aren't coming in to
You're right.
just
I
opaque
remember
doors
only
that
from
don't.
our tour over at,
Yeah.
at Heinsberg.
And I think, for all of the tenants, including you, Suzanne, if you wind up remaining here, moving walls around on this scale project is not like a huge deal.
I'm
And,
married to a contractor, so I totally get it.
and
Yeah.
so one of the things that, I want to do it's the same with the Historical Society. They've had some good suggestions on a wall here or wall there being in a different configuration,
Yeah.
but that's not, as far as this exercise, it's not really.
It's not
a
gonna
cost.
change the numbers, yeah.
And I want to assure them, and I've tried to, that, if this project is successful at, getting a bond, that, we'll get much more specific about, and talking with all of the tenants about, what their needs are and how we accommodate them.
Yeah.
And that's not really a dollars and cents question necessarily. It's more like a functionality question. Okay.
And they're gonna want then when we get down to giving them measurements so they can start figuring out how they're gonna fit out their space.
So, solar's out. Site work, maybe, we'd have to, we should at least have the
Well,
answer to the
solar
question.
could be phased or it done in some other
We
way,
will-
but not a part of the bond.
Assumption, yeah, we just
We're gonna
remove
go.
that as a soft cost and it helps the bond come down, but we're still prepping for that total scope.
And if you can come back to us, our next meeting, we should probably make a decision at our next meeting about, at least be able, what can we describe? Can we
So
describe
that we can go.
9.5 million and, $500,000 more would give us, this really attractive green space. Something like that.
Could be the
And-
way we go out there and talk to
And
people.
then we could talk to it and see what they think.
1.2 on the nice site, or,
It's probably 500,
well, yeah, I know.
It's
whatever
probably half of
The
that.
number is,
Okay, so Dave's got to go.
okay.
So do you have enough direction? Andrew?
So I can try to break out site cost for the bare minimum.
That's really all we've asked. them to do.
That's really all you've asked, I
I
think.
think that's all
No,
we
and
really
we
There,
addressed,
there
can
isn't,
do.
there,
address the yellow items
Yep.
on there.
we address
Yeah.
the yellow item, so I can make a tweak to this.
You're gonna have Connie or Josh
Yeah.
look at the interim financing if there's a
Yeah.
cost to that.
Yeah.
We,
And I think we
there
identified.
isn't, I mean, I can look at it again.
Mhm.
As far as, for the building, unless you're prepared to make substantial changes to the project and really not
No.
do something.
Yeah, I mean, I think David said it really well, that you guys haven't, this is not over the top. There's not a lot of fluff. There's not a lot of
I
fluff in
know.
it and we've
We
got it.
scaled back a great deal.
Exactly.
ourselves,
So,
Well, we looked at all those additions and all those options for,
but nobody knows that,
Yeah.
so,
it's really a matter of public relations and looking for creative funding sources, I
Yeah.
think, at this point.
Well, so the last time Jeff, and I'll transition to the one thing that I was gonna cut in terms of next steps for you guys is.
Yeah.
You have one round of questions that I think I answered.
yes,
And the idea behind it is that you guys are trying to publicize a frequently asked
we
question
want,
list. And
we wanna go out.
Have you seen that?
Eventually, we're gonna have
Did she
to,
send that to you?
I saw the the draft that I
Yeah.
responded to.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've made tweaks.
I
do something
I
that's-
haven't really done anything to it yet because
So there's
the
there's that.
number was the big thing. What's gonna be in there, or are we taking anything out?
So I think, the next step is to continue to elicit questions and try to get all of
Yeah.
them out there in the open so that you aren't blindsided by something and you understand how to write and consolidate. You guys have been doing this for 4 years now, long before we were just involved. And finding a way to consolidate everything that you've done in a coherent narrative
Yeah.
that is concise enough so that when
Right.
people ask basic
Mhm.
initial questions, you have the immediate quick response.
Right. Yes,
And in working towards that process, as more of those questions get raised, we've offered this, and the hope would be to go through the exercise on your end and get as much of the public involved as possible. But once there are enough questions that we know things are out there in the open, there's nothing that's gonna get revisited again and again, we can try to have a meeting where we're more available with the entire design team potentially to answer more detailed stuff if there seem to be critical path items that really have people stuck on why are we not doing this, or
or why are we doing that?
but we have documented everything
Yeah,
that
yeah.
we've done, and the
Yeah.
hope is that when those questions come up, like why aren't we doing the police station
Right.
is a prime example. Why aren't we doing a Sally Port? That's an obvious one. We know why we're not doing a Sally Port. We looked at 15 different
many
options to
Sally Port?
to address the police station. And if for some reason, that's just an example, if for some reason revisiting that, suddenly the answer becomes less clear, we can try to find a way to answer that.
Right.
But I think we would want you guys to kind of go through that exercise of
Yeah.
getting those questions out there
Yeah.
and seeing how the public responds and checking the documentation that we have for the process to make sure that it is actually clear on, because, people are gonna, us included, are gonna start forgetting a year ago why we made the decision not to do a
Right,
certain option.
right.
It's all been fairly logical, but it's easy to forget the 10 different.
We spent a whole
Steps
meeting
that
on
led
this,
to,
or a whole
yeah.
2 meetings talking about this, yes.
Okay, so I think, while town meeting seems a long ways away, we need to have a bond number that we're firm on by
January.
December.
Okay.
December in order for the select board to land on it so that we can approve the warning in early January.
Mhm.
And the select board is going to have limited bandwidth, starting next month because it's budget season.
Yeah,
So I would suggest that we try to finalize what our recommendation is at our next meeting, which is October 5th.
yeah, and I'm wondering if we need a meeting without that Andrew doesn't need to be here. If he could send us the information.
That would probably be
by
okay.
email, because I think we should go through the FAQ and talk, because we should
That's-
need to go through and know what documents are, if we're gonna go out to the Historical Society and the Senior Center and all these places.
But your next
What
meeting is October
documents?
5th.
I think so, yeah.
I think it's the 28th of September, is it? Or is
or
it,
is
is
it?
this a 5-week?
Yeah,
Is it
maybe.
so weird?
No, it's the 28th, I think.
It's the 28th.
Yeah,
My bad.
yeah. But I think this is the point at which we need to think about what we need, like we have the the things on the boards that we were originally thinking about for the select board, but that all got, making a board of the site plan and making a board of the, the drawing of.
That I wonder if I could ask you. So, the one piece that, the one visual that we don't have that I think would be effective would be an elevation with a difference in the windows, a before and after picture.
Yeah,
So before, this
Yeah.
is what it looks like now from, I don't know, maybe that corner over there or something, and what it would look like with, full windows, because that you know,
That's gonna
Us-
make a big difference, and the windows.
I
back
mean, the
in-
windows alone
yeah,
The
can
windows
go a long
back
way
in
for sure.
In the basement are gonna make it look
it will make,
a lot different.
it'll look a lot different. So, you know, the two biggest visual impacts is the site work and the windows on this building.
Yeah.
Um,
I think with the inside design, the site plan and the elevation, that would be enough.
most of this is expensive stuff that,
Nobody's
is
gonna
not
see.
visual, you know, it's,
Well,
you
and
know,
so that's the and you
Yeah.
know, that's the artistic license of finding a way to make it
Yeah,
read and be received, but that's the challenge of presenting an exterior rendering of this building when it's restored, because
well,
we're
the other big visual
an
change.
historic photo sometimes goes a long way, where
You
you're
could ask- you
saying,
could ask-
here's the current one, here's the original, the intent is to.
yeah, we have,
Similar.
this. I'm sure Karen Yagi can dig up.
The one big change is that wall down in, the bottom of the stairs. And the stairwell is what.
Opening up the stairwell on the
Opening
first,
up the
from
stairwell
the
is-
second to third, yeah,
I'll ask Karen to find a picture of that.
yeah.
Um,
And Karen, I'm,
so I think that's probably a good idea. I think, you know, we
We
should
should
have a
probably do
meeting.
like a small scale elevation that at least.
Yeah, and I think, we could have a meeting without you.
Okay, so we wouldn't be at the September 28th
The
meeting.
28th meeting
I
and,
think that would.
I
be-
won't be here. I have open house at
Right,
school that night,
But
so.
that's okay.
yeah,
But
that's-
we're
you guys
just
can meet without
talking
me.
about
Yep.
a strategy,
You know,
more strategy.
strategy and making sure, going through the FAQ.
Yeah.
And saying, is all this, are there?
And,
questions?
And I can try to get you those,
Yeah.
site, so the site work is the real.
That would be
number
helpful.
there.
Yeah.
And so.
Cause that, I think we should talk about, and then we can.
And then, and
we'll be
we
close
could,
to it.
we can land on. At that, meeting, we can land on, when we want to have a presentation by the full team and to whom. You know, would it be the select board, would it be, you know, a larger meeting, or, I'm not sure. you know.
Well, I would hesitate going into a select board meeting, because if the
Select
agenda is short,
Mm-mm.
the intent of it would be only if there seems to be a lot of questions that are detail in nature,
So I think
where
what-
you would want.
Andrew,
Public
what
meeting.
you felt like was we should be going out to the community first,
Mhm.
before that.
Yeah,
design
I don't think we can't just. Yeah, we can't just show up at a meeting
Without having.
without a plan in place of of what we're presenting and what we're being prepared to
I think we. need to
discuss,
do some
because
community.
what we don't want is. This process has been a year-long process. And if we go into a format like that without a plan in place, we can be revisiting things that require far more than just a single night of discussion.
Okay,
or
so how about on our 28th, you know, we talk about amongst ourselves, and then in the following meeting, which is, the 12th, that we plan what the team meeting is going to be, you know, which would be, you know,
It's not
probably the
12th.
next one after that, you know, early November.
Yeah. Let's rewind a second. The team meeting is only gonna happen, in my opinion, if there seems to be a sticking point in terms of a question.
Or something,
Right.
some
I think
As
redesign.
you reach out to
Yeah.
the public, if there are concerns about decisions that have been made with the scope that are unanswerable through a frequently asked question handout that
Yeah.
you guys are developing, and you need us present to help walk through some of those decisions, we could probably be there, but
Yeah,
we
I-
can't.
I'm feeling pretty comfortable really with,
I think.
Right, I
I
think
think we
the-
understand the numbers. It's just if something comes up we haven't anticipated.
And I think that's what Andrew's saying is like, if we're gonna plan at our next meeting, like, okay, so in the month of October or November, this committee is going to have this opportunity, and this opportunity to meet with different members of the public, you know, whether it's like, hey, we're gonna have
let's.
coffee and cookies at the library community room and present the plan and take questions. And then
Mhm.
if after those meetings, there are questions that we can't answer or things that are sticking points, then we can bring in the team.
Yeah, good, thank you.
And, you know, and so And that's all in preparation for getting the select board to say yes to some number.
Mhm.
And once they say yes, then it goes out to, there's an official warning, and then we have to have, informational meetings before we
Right.
vote anyway.
Mhm.
But they probably won't be very unlike what we're doing.
I think it'll
Well,
be
it's
very
be
similar.
more, it would be not opportunities for people to change the plan.
No, no.
Right.
Yeah, this is
Like,
not,
this is what the bond
a
is
charrette.
about.
This is
what the-
not
yeah.
a, yeah.
No.
Yeah,
we're
this is
not-
not a design
yeah, this is-
charrette,
Yeah,
yeah.
exactly.
This is to help understand the
Yeah.
cost of the design.
And this is
I-
why we came up with what we came up with.
Yeah,
You know,
okay,
and we'll see.
I like that plan.
Yeah.
All right,
Okay. So
are we done with Andrew?
I think so. Are we done with you, Andrew?
Oh, are you?
Is Andrew done with us?
And once again,
No.
Lori will have very terrific minutes, so that's,
Yeah,
we'll send you the minutes and.
perfect. And I'll get you that information.
Yeah,
And then John and I can,
so you're not needed at the 28th meeting
won't
and
be-
we don't know about the next.
Yeah, we don't know about.
11th.
Figure that out.
Can we let you know
know
after the
about the
next,
11th.
whether we have any
It's the
need for you
12th.
to be here on the 12th,
What is-
October 12th? Which would be the one following that?
That would be the one following.
Oh, yeah, we can.
I don't
invite you.
know that, I mean, we may.
All
just-
depends on how your meeting goes.
We may just be continuing our, not meeting as a committee and doing our
But I think,
presentation.
I think at our next meeting, we really need to start nailing down. the
Yeah,
schedule.
Yeah. I would agree.
And so,
Okay.
and then the only other question was the elevation.
Yeah, he's got that.
Yeah.
Okay,
Okay.
so,
Great.
we punted on, thank you, Andrew.
Thank you.
Once again, really helpful having you here.
Yeah.
Glad to be here.
We punted on the update on the library work, and,
I can talk to you quickly about what Martha.
we can't approve the minutes.
That's fine. Just put them both sets of minutes on next.
And, you want to explain your conversation with Martha?
Thanks,
Yeah.
Andrew.
I can do this very quickly. So Martha sent me an email and said, can we talk about the project? And I was in a panic thinking, oh, she's gonna have some comment about the amount of money. No. She and Marcia Turner, do you know Marcia? Turner?
I think so.
I think she's on the senior center board.
Mhm.
We're going somewhere and in the process, they developed a case statement for going out to the public and doing private fundraising for this project.
Cool.
So, and her point, I said, I feel like is it weird to be going out to do private fundraising for a bonded project? And her rationale, which I had not thought of, was that if we do a private, if you have the wherewithal to give money to the project, you'll be helping others in our community who do not have the money to pay for more taxes.
Mhm.
So you'd be reducing the bond to help the people in our community who can't afford it.
Mhm.
And I'm like, oh, okay, that's good. So anyway, she just thinks we should just go out not for specifics, she used to do development. She was a development professional. She said, I don't think she said, we could have a plaque in the building with all the donors to the project in the end, like the Y has.
Or the
We don't
hospital.
have to
Yep.
be putting names on things. Or, she sees this as, the key is to develop a list of the people that you want to go approach.
And she would be a good person to.
Well, and Martha said, and then we started brainstorming other people, like Christine Wernicke, Christy Witters, but she said she would be willing to she said she thought this should, if we want to have a discussion with a few people, and she mentioned Lisa, because she had mentioned this to Lisa,
Mhm.
just get a small subgroup of people together to kind of just talk about this.
I
And
thought-
I said, this committee cannot be that private fundraising committee. There needs
Thank
to
you.
be a separate committee
Thank
to do that.
The
And
development
And
directors.
Martha, I thought you were scaling back on what you're doing.
Well, I thought one of the things that I might want to do personally is talk to, Katie Mather, Christine Wernicke, and Christy
Christy
Witter,
Witter.
and just explain to them where we're at.
Well, you might say, and we have a townsperson that thinks we might get
Okay.
their take on the private fundraising, and
I'll do that.
might they be willing to help?
I'll do
with
that. You know, because
And I said, so Martha, do you think this is something we should be hiring a Christine Graham to lead and paying her? And she said, no, not at this point. But, you know, that's something that could be on the table
I wonder
too.
if Diane Meyer,
Or Diane, yeah. I mean, I don't know what her experience of fundraising, like capital campaigns.
but she's
June
good
had
with
Cindy some of
language.
that at St. Mike's.
Well,
when she
June
worked
would,
at
I
St.
mean,
Mike's.
June would be another person I would, you know, she would be perfect to put on the list. So anyway, so that
you know,
was,
I've been planning on reaching out to, you know, individuals. Hey, just kind of break the news to them. This is where we're at.
I mean, Martha is talking about there are people who could afford $1 million. She's in that range. She's on that glide path.
That'd be
And I'm
great.
like, if you think they're out there and you know them,
Well, and the two
No.
sexy things in the project are the site plan and the energy pieces. You
Right.
know, the rest of
but if
it's all
we're
nuts and
able to
bolts.
fundraise a couple million,
That would be awesome.
Mhm.
That would be awesome.
you know?
But we'd need that money in the bank because you wouldn't want to, you know,
Well,
bond for 8
that's
million and then start the
problem
project.
is the timing, unless we say, let's hold off.
Well, what,
It looks like the
so there, you know, and there's various ways to do it, you know, so we had talked about, you know, bonding for so much, and that's, and the language can and should say, you know, minus any grants or
contributions
that we get anyways, you know, so that's all, this project's gonna take a couple of years
Mhm.
to build out the best case scenario.
Mhm.
So that's good news. So I think we should,
I know it was much better than I thought she was gonna complain about the amount of money.
well, and so, and I had one other question to ask you. You know, one is that the people I've talked to were not shocked. And I'm shocked as I was. And not, you know, and they thought it was worth it. So, so that was encouraging to me. I think Linda's probably not gonna get back on the committee as much as we would like her to. Should we ask somebody else to join the committee? And the person I was thinking of was Karen Yagi.
Yeah, Karen had some great suggestions over
I think
email if
so,
she's
yeah.
interested and
So what I can do
able.
is I can call her and ask
She's
her.
already up to speed on
She is.
some of what we've done, which is nice.
And she is, and she's had very thoughtful comments. So,
Yeah.
if there's no objection, I'll ask her,
yeah.
and you know, she'd have to get approved through the select board and all, but I don't think that.
Say that I can see that there could be a perception that having the town clerk who runs the elections on the committee that's making this recommendation could have the appearance
I know, I never hold a lot of,
of conflict of interest, even though, you know,
Yeah.
you and I know it, you know, she's not
she's
not been advocating for anything other
Right.
than a safer, nicer, warm
Right, right.
working space, but
yeah, I suggested she buy an air purifier.
yeah, okay,
So I think we're adjourned.
good.
Yeah,
Yeah, we
good.
have a
Thank
plan
you.
for next week, which is just to dig into
Yep.
that. Yeah.